Hello, and welcome to today's online panel discussion on the topic of optical devices in biomedical sensing and how that innovation is advancing healthcare. My name is Mark Elliott. I am the COO of Europa Science, which is the publisher of Electro-Optics. There's a lot to talk about today, from monitoring vital signs and detecting biomarkers to imaging tissues at the cellular level. Optical technologies are helping researchers and clinicians push the boundaries of precision medicine. This online panel discussion will explore the latest developments in optical devices for biomedical sensing, focusing on how these technologies are being applied in areas such as disease diagnosis, patient monitoring, and personalised medicine. There's a lot to cover, so in the hour or so ahead that we hope to explain the fundamentals of optical sensing and its role in biomedical applications. We're going to take a look at emerging technologies and how innovations in optical biosensors, spectroscopy, and imaging systems are kind of playing out. Discuss how these devices are improving diagnostics, monitoring, and obviously the areas of things like personalised healthcare. And finally, to review the key challenges and strategies for integrating optical technologies into clinical and research environments. If it sounds like an ambitious program, you are absolutely right there. But I have some help. To help me unpick this topic, I have two men who really know what they're talking about. First of all, I'd like to introduce them both, and we'll start with Dr. Aravind Jalajakumari, who is the CTO of Singular Photonics. He studied electrical engineering and electronics at the University of Edinburgh. He is a co-founder and the CTO of Singular Photonics, which is a next-generation SPAD sensor company that was spun out from the university and is developing cutting-edge solutions for imaging, sensing, and related applications. His research has focused on solid-state LiDAR sensors operating in the shortwave infrared spectrum, and his expertise spans low-power analog and mixed signal to electronics with a particular focus on single photon detection technologies. He's a recipient of many prestigious recognitions, including a Royal Academy of Engineering Enterprise Fellowship. So welcome, Aravind. Thank you for joining us today. And then we have Faisal Kamran, who is a principal technology analyst at Sony and also a member of our Photonics 100 alumni. And he joined this illustrious group last year. Welcome, Faisal. His work has spanned several core areas from biophotonics to sustainability frameworks, hyperspectral imaging, quantum technologies, sensing, displays, AR, VR communications, and business innovation. And current projects include developing a hyperspectral imaging camera with the highest combined spatial and spectral resolution, which is addressing a major market gap for high-end R&D and exploratory work in healthcare and other areas. So welcome to Faisal too. I'm really looking forward to the chat today. Just a quick bit of housekeeping, if I may. These online panel discussions is designed to be useful and interactive. We would welcome any questions from you too who are watching live. So please submit them at the bottom of your screens and we'll do our best to tackle them across what I hope will be a full and lively discussion. Okay, we're going to start the discussion now. And I'm going to warm us up with a very general question, which I'll go to Faisal first, if I may. So I wanted to kind of discuss what common challenges arrive for optical devices in the area of biomedical sensing. What are the obvious things that can go wrong and these technologies are there to overcome? Oh, you need to unmute, Faisal, sorry. Bottom left.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Thank you so much, Mark, for a really generous introduction and asking us to be part of this panel and discuss this topic. So this topic of finding the challenges, I think, is kind of broad as well, but at the same time, you can actually sum them up really shortly too. You can maybe a few items that you can list on the top of your head is ensuring biocompatibility, stability, miniaturization of the devices. You need to manage the cost, and then sort of combine them into making the outputs more user-friendly. So if we break it down a bit more, you can think about strict safety and biocompatibility requirements of the medical use cases that these devices have to rigorously go through. They must be safe, they need to be reliable, they need to be stable long-term in biological environments. For example, if we are putting a fibre-optic sensor in contact with the tissue or blood, it needs to be sterilizable and not provoke any sort of a tissue reaction. We also have sort of a to consider the miniaturization of the devices without losing the performance. And this is kind of a critical challenge, because once you start packaging the optics on a very small footprint, the performance becomes a really critical issue. So the packaging becomes kind of a really important in terms of the design aspect of it. So what we want is as small as possible, but as minimally invasive as possible as well, but while keeping the devices calibrated over the long period inside the body. So essentially what we want is kind of a hospital-proof and body-friendly device, which is kind of a tall order, but once put together, it has huge value for the consumer side.
Interesting. That's a very good summary of it. Hospital-proof and body-friendly. I like that a lot. I have a question that's sprung up as you were talking about that, but I'm going to ask Aravind to give his thoughts on that. On the same subject. Common challenges for these sorts of devices in this field.
Thanks, Mark, again for the introduction, and hi everyone. So I would like to speak from a point of view of electronics, because that's my background. So we have had lots of these challenges in the problems that we are trying to solve. I always think about all these problems as trying to find a needle in the haystack. Most of the biomedical problem is basically you trying to find a needle in the haystack, and it's basically how you sieve out the unwanted signals or unwanted variables, and then reaching out to the right signal that you want to detect. In case of using our optical detectors, the main challenge is basically the signal's quality, and the signal sensitivity is usually too faint, and also very disturbed by noise, let's say. So you need to employ complex signal processing techniques or optical techniques to filter out and then clean out the signal so you get the right parameter that you're after. So that's the biggest challenge technically that we have so far, adding to all that Faisal mentioned, including the cost of the device while you're realizing this, the cost of the system, the ability to have the lifelong usability of the device, etc., adds up to this.
Okay, it's interesting. So, what the question for you both then about this? I mean, would you characterize this context as a challenging environment? I mean, what's it? Body-friendly, hospital-proof. I understand the regulatory framework. You were saying, Aravind, about the challenge of the signal being often too faint, and both of you mentioned the miniaturization challenge. Is this a tough environment in which to develop technology? Aravind, I'll ask you.
I would say yes. I would say it's a really challenging environment, but these challenges can be solved with the right approach. So think about certification, or thinking about getting your device medically qualified, or thinking in advance, getting that planned into your design cycle so that your sensor or your system is compatible with the parameter that you're trying to sense, at the same time satisfies all the regulatory requirements, which gives you which helps you solve the challenge.
Yeah. Okay. And Faisal, what would you say?
I agree with what Evan said about the challenging environment, because the challenge is more about the side effect or the impact of the use case in the environment. It's a human body. It's not sort of a static object that you can get away with some false positives or some sort of errors. It has an impact on the life in one way or the other. And along with that, I think the environmental challenges aside, one of the biggest challenges that I also see with most of these devices is that is the talent required to then operate them. So high equipment costs on one side, but the shortage of the skilled personnel to operate on the really complex optical instrumentations are kind of a fundamental ongoing barriers in the market as well. So in fact, even technologies like, for example, this see-through optical imaging, they have struggled with the complex imaging interpretation, and then on top of that, the need for the specialized training for the operators. So in my view, the best case design is one that hides the entire photonics behind the curtain and provides a really clear, actionable results without requiring a PhD in optics to actually understand that. So again, this is a gauntlet, but overcoming these challenges is kind of a rewarding, because when it all comes together, the payoff is huge. We get sensors that can, say, sit on a patient's skin or even inside the body and deliver reliable medical data in the real time. and this is achievable by mostly interdisciplinary collaboration between engineers, biologists, clinicians, the lawyers as well, to sort of take care of the regulatory side while producing this sensor then.
I understand. Thank you. And I want to just kind of hover here for a little bit longer, if you wouldn't mind, because it's a great introduction to the topic area, I think. Where would these challenges have been 5, 10 years ago? Have we ever overcome any omnipresent challenges that were there before that are largely eradicated now because the technology and the science has moved on enough? So I'm asking, I suppose, really, are these the same challenges that you would have identified 5, 10 years ago? I guess in terms of the context of the body and the hospital and the regulatory framework, yes, but I'm wondering if we fixed any of or overcome any of these challenges from a technology perspective. Faisal, I'll stay with you if I may, please.
In a way, yes, we have actually well understood these challenges now. So most of the effort is now done to mitigate the impact of those challenges. We understand what the cost problem is. We understand what the market is going to demand now and what kind of a product can actually successfully be launched in the market. Just for the sake of an argument, a new development that has sort of come into the light in these challenges recently is the sustainability factor. So if your devices are not sustainable, even though they're extremely well in terms of operations and functionality, it's highly likely that they would not be able to sustainably work in the market for a long time because the government regulations are going to impede their growth. The demands from the consumer side is not going to be fulfilled. And so for US, EU, China, they are now sort of implementing some regulatory reforms, European Union specifically, which would demand the devices to sort of match or exceed certain sort of threshold of sustainability benchmarks then. So I think we know how these devices now need to be produced and what essentially the future might look like as well. And the challenges kind of have been well understood too. It's more about now making them in a way that the future challenges can be overcome. The optical barriers are there. We know what the fundamental limitations are. Some of these technologies are kind of hard limited by the physics and the overall miniaturization or the sort of technology required around it. But next 5 to 10 years time is going to be the growth period where we would see likely the significant miniaturizations of really large scale devices with the improvements of the optics, photonics, and the overall signal processing, especially with the AI and data driven approaches which are coming into the market.
Okay, that's a useful context. Thank you. Aravind, what anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the challenges in the past, we have been solving them, and if you look at the issues that we have seen in the past few years ago have now been solved thanks to actually a lot of compute that we have these days. So most of the technological challenges coming from sensors front have been solved, but that's also introducing new challenges. If we think about optical detectors, especially smart detectors, these detectors bring new modalities. So basically, what you were unable to see in the past can now be seen and analyzed. That helps solve new problems or the problems that we have been seeing, but it also brings new challenges, for example, data. So now you have a lot more data than what you have been seeing last 10 years. So you need more data processing capabilities or data analysis capabilities closer to the sensor or detector so that you can efficiently detect and solve or detect and diagnose a medical condition, let's say. Now, that's how I see it. So the patterns we have seen so for last few years where you had these challenges in the biomedical sensing, some of them have been solved thanks to the compute, thanks to miniaturization, thanks to electronics, but that's now introducing new challenges, basically more data, more patterns to be analyzed, and bringing in new variables. I agree to Faisal here. Like we can see lots of AI tags being added to many of these optical sensing elements, bringing AI to the edge or deep learning or machine vision to the edge so that you can now, your sensors can now see and analyze things at the edge itself.
Yeah, that's great. I often visualize it as being a bit like a ripple effect. You kind of fix one area of challenge,
Exactly.
it creates another set of opportunities, that then creates another set of challenges to, improve, or to, often, as you say, the AI conundrum and the data growth that creates is a well kind of understood, I think, challenge for everybody, whether it's in sensing or any other kind of area of technology
Exactly.
development. So no, great stuff. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I'm going to go back to Faisal, if I may, and we're going to kind of dive into hyperspectral imaging for a moment. I wondered, because obviously that's been a big focus for you in particular, how the optical elements involved in this have been driving value for end users using biomedical applications. What is the value definition in in that area, and how big is it? How would you define it?
Okay, that's a very kind of a interesting way to look at the technology, because I think I strongly believe that the angle that most of the technology needs to be sort of looked at is from the value that it adds, and what actually is it that's going to be solving in the real world side as well. So hyperspectral imaging, or HSI as we call that, is kind of a game changer in many biomedical applications, because it gives us a really rich spectral information for almost every pixel of an image. Essentially, instead of just a simple color photo, you get a detailed light spectrum at each point on, say, a tissue sample. This means we can detect subtle chemical and molecular differences in tissue non-invasively. And for end users like clinicians and researchers, that translates into earlier and more accurate diagnostics. For example, different tissue types or disease states, they have unique spectral fingerprints, and HSI can capture those fingerprints. It's been shown to distinguish cancerous tissue from normal tissue by their spectral signatures, and this is incredibly valuable during something like tumor surgery, or surgeons can potentially see the invisible margins of a tumor because the malignant and the healthy tissue reflects light differently. So in fact, HSI is emerging as a tool of real-time interoperative guidance, and even for the analyzing tissue pathology without needing chemical stains at all. And all of this is done label-free, non-invasive, and using the intrinsic optical properties of the tissue. Now, if you give me a minute, maybe I could actually touch on a couple of other sort of elements of this value in itself. So,
Yes, go ahead.
Think from sort of moving away from the oncology side, it might be of particular interest only to surgeons, but general patient care, like wound care, your hyperspectral imaging cameras can be used in the UK and a lot of other European countries as well for using monitoring things like diabetic foot ulcers. So it can create a tissue oxygenation map in a 2D format of a wound, and basically showing how well the blood is perfusing in the different regions then. And that helps predict which areas are at the risk of not healing well compared to the other. And this way, the nurses or the doctors, they can color code that map. So it's a great value in terms of visualizing where the problem lies as well. And it's an example of adding value, better information delivered instantly and painlessly. And a lot of studies have found one of the key elements is that these imaging technologies are non-harmful because they're simply reflected light.
Yeah, and I guess that's, in a biomedical context, the ability to find the information that's at the root of the problem without causing any additional pressure, kind of impact is absolutely critical. Moving on to a different type of area, or an aligned one, but certainly not the same. I mean, Aravind, you and your team at Singular Photonics have been focused on SPAD sensor development. How does this work in non-invasive biomedical processes? Is it the same type of technology, or is it somehow different?
Thanks, Mark. I would say SPADs are different from conventional optical sensing techniques. The reason is because they are single photon sensitive. So these detectors can detect a single photon, and it can also time them. So you can generate a quanta image of a sample just by looking at it, saying that, okay, a photon has arrived or not arrived. So the SPADs gives you that information. Adding to that, you can couple timing with it. So precisely you can tell when that photon has arrived. So this is very crucial. Normal detectors, let's say a CCD or a CMOS detector, would find it very difficult or challenging or nearly impossible to tell you when a photon arrived. Whereas this SPAD technology, if you look at the inherent nature of it, it can tell you when a photon has arrived. This is quite important in many applications because this enables applications like time resolved, let's say film. So that can now tell you like rich spectral information from a biomedical sample or a biological sample non-invasively. So you can get, if you have I can talk about one of our sensors. So we have a sensor Sirona, which is a line sensor, 512 channel spectrometer. With suitable optics, you can generate or grab a fluorescent signature from a sample with 512 different spectral channels. This is quite important, and it's quite new. This means now you can, it's very similar to what Faisal said earlier, you can diagnose diseases quite quickly. For example, differentiating between cancerous or non-cancerous tissues. You can do this non-invasively. You can implement techniques such as endoscopes, which can then link to these detectors to diagnose these diseases, and also apply ablation techniques at the live site itself. So quick diagnosis, quick healing, that's quite important. This is really possible with this type of detectors. It can tell you, it can create 3D images. That's another thing. With the timing capability, it is possible to create optical tomographs or 3D images of internal body structures up to certain depth if you use the right wavelength. Because if you look at the evolution of SPADs, they have been the solid state CMOS SPADs over the last few years are getting good at detecting infrared wavelengths, especially near infrared, thanks to all the push from the LiDAR folks who developed these detectors for autonomous driving or 3D mapping of various other applications or areas. But we can use the same detectors for biomedical applications as well, which means you can create rich 3D images of certain body part, let's say. So that's another interesting application area where SPADs are bringing in into the biomedical space. Then we can also use it for correlation spectroscopy applications where you can use the SPADs to image the body fluid motion. Let's say blood is a good example. You can image the rate of flow of blood, and from which you can diagnose or you can deduce certain vital parameters. This can tell you how your body is performing. Are you going to go to a stress? Are your stress levels increasing? How is your heart functioning? So very important body vital parameters can be deduced from by using this type of detectors.
Okay, and one of the joy. Oh, sorry, Faisal, you go.
Yeah, when sorry, Evan was talking about the film, and it just sort of came another point. It brought another point to my mind as well. So, considering the SPAD, you can and then there is this time of flight imaging next to it as well, right? So think of it as a sort of LiDAR for biomedical use cases. So SPADs can be used to send out very low power light pulses and time how long the photons take to return. And this can be used, for example, in 3D imaging of tissues or even measuring vital signs from a distance. So there are prototypes that use SPAD LiDARs to measure a person's heartbeat or respiration by detecting tiny motions on a chest from across a distance, completely on the other side of the room. So a complete non-contact monitoring system. And compare it, or sort of pair it with the fact that the global optical detection biosensor market is rapidly growing, almost like about more than 12% cumulative annual growth rate. It's like over $11 billion in the next by the end of the next decade, or the start of the next one then.
Okay, that's it. Now, one of the joys I have in these sort of situations, being a specialist in the way that you guys are, I'm often interested where you have what seem to be relatively competing technologies trying to do something similar. Is that a fair characterization? And how do you, or can you, blend the two approaches to create a single 360 perfect view, if such a thing were possible? Do these things really compete, or is it not quite as simplistic as that?
I would say they are quite do not compete. They can work together. These technologies can work together, like sensor fusion, let's say. So hyperspectral image, you can actually use SPADs for realizing hyperspectral or multispectral imaging solutions with single photon detection capability and again timing capability. So I would say it's basically two different types of technologies or modalities aiding each other, and we can engineer systems with those, then deduce these vital parameters.
Okay.
Yeah, and I second that as well. It's less about the competition; it's about the multimodal systems. Then, so I think this is, you can consider it as a potential future trend, or a likely future trend as well. That you have these individual technologies working in their own niche markets, and then you actually combine them together to sort of enhance their value chain. And come up with the new use cases, or sort of help them a single device be capable of doing multiple tasks at the same time, just reducing the overall cost and the infrastructure required to build a single technology together. So I think this is more towards going in a future trend where the multimodal systems are likely going to play a significant role in the healthcare systems.
Okay, that's a great summary. So, you know, it's always important for people listening to this to kind of come away with a sense of what's coming. And we've almost jumped ahead to one of the final questions, is what's in the crystal ball view. But that sounds to me like something that's obvious, you know, in terms of the benefit. And, you know, thank you for kind of clarifying that it's something we can expect. Okay, I'm going to stay with you, Aravind, if I may, and ask a little bit more about these LiDAR sensors operating on shortwave infrared spectrum, and wonder if you could characterize what particular benefits these kind of sensors bring to this space.
I think the detectors themselves operate in various wavelengths, like you mentioned, Mark. So our technology, the post-processing technology that we develop at Singular, is actually detector agnostic. So you can pair that up with a silicon detector that operates from, let's say, ultraviolet all the way up to near infrared. You can link that up with a InGaAs pad or a germanium on silicon pad, which operates in the shortwave infrared or midwave infrared regions. So basically, you can switch the detectors, but you can still keep the readout the same. That means you still have the single photon sensitivity, also the complex post-processing that we bring in. Now, when you switch the detectors, what that gives you is you can now look deeper and deeper into the body. That's if you shine a visible light, that probably will penetrate only a few millimeters. Whereas if you shine a infrared laser or an infrared pulse laser, that can shine tens of, maybe like more depth into your body, like close to 10 millimeters or even more. Mm-hmm. So that means now you're able to see deeper into your body, which means you can analyze and you can process photons coming out from those depths. That means you're seeing deeper and then diagnosing more and more conditions, or helping clinicians or helping researchers develop new techniques to solve complex health problems.
Okay, thank you. Faisal, sorry.
Yeah, I think I've provided a good summary. So I also think about these SWIRE LiDARs in a summation. They bring better penetration, really unique value proposition and a required one. They require really good biochemical sensitivity, and on top of that, they provide safety as well. So we are essentially giving a medical device a new kind of a sense, and the ability to capture a 3D and spectroscopic information in a very safe way. And it's kind of an early stage, but a lot of this is in R&D. But I foresee, like in the next 5 to 10 years time, SWIRE LiDAR modules could be part of the advanced medical imaging rigs, or even consumer healthcare devices for at-home monitoring. Then.
Yeah, I mean, I think as an industry, we're so familiar with LiDAR in the automotive industry, for example, where you know, there's a very kind of, I suppose, kind of obvious landscape for it to operate in. The human body in particular is a very complex, you know, multi-tissue liquid mess, if you like. It's completely different, right? You wouldn't even think you know, LiDAR would work in that context.
Exactly. Yeah.
Quite interesting to hear that it's there and it's being used already. And it, you know, in time, as we say, you know, 10 years hence, it'll probably be much more sophisticated. The depth thing, I'm interested in that. You mentioned, Aravind, that, you know, 10, did you say 10 millimeters? Obviously,
we can see few millimeters down through your skull, for example. We have a sensor specifically designed with for this application to see through your skull. What we do is we shine a near-infrared laser into your skull. The laser will penetrate and it will go through your cranium tissue. So there is blood flow there. and the laser will be diffused, the diffusion caused by the flow of blood. This will create speckle patterns, or very watery patterns, we call it. These speckle patterns can then be imaged because the photons from the speckle patterns will be re-emitted. This can be captured by a suitable detector. We use our SPAT arrays for this. Very good detection efficiency at near-infrared wavelengths. And once you image the speckle pattern, you can do some computation on your sensor. You have a small computer there that performs a certain math function, from which you can deduce, let's say, rate of flow of blood, or it can tell you things like, are you kind of going through certain mood swings? Are you happy? Are you sad? It can kind of predict certain conditions. For example, the onset of a stroke, let's say. So things like that can be predicted. It can also be used with complex modeling. It can also deduce various other vital parameters. So that's a very interesting technology coming out very rapidly into the market, and we are proud that we are helping medical companies build these instruments with our SPAT technology.
Yeah. One of the temptations in a talk like this is always to jump into what's the future look like, and I hesitate to ask, but I'm going to anyway. You know, what you've described there is a very sophisticated analytical process to evaluate what's going on, whereas I think most people think about medicine being about a conversation with a doctor or a healthcare professional who then makes an evaluation based on their knowledge. Can you imagine, and how far off are we from going in to see your doctor, if you like, and a machine is basically doing all of that diagnostic work for you? You're just standing there and it's working all this stuff out. Is that the stuff of 50 years hence, or is it sooner ahead than that? Faisal, I'll ask you, and then we'll come back to you, Aravind, on that one.
Well, whether it can be done or not is a separate question from whether it will be accepted or not. So, right, so the patient-doctor relationship is not just to do, it doesn't have to do only with the medicine, it has to do with the element of trust as well. Now, as much as some people would like to sort of completely skip the talking to a human person at all, just because some can be annoying and some just don't like to talk to anybody else, I think there's a significant element of trust that needs a special sort of an oversight as well. Plus, somebody has to take an accountability at the end too. You can't leave it completely to a robot at this point yet, where our technology is not 100% fault-free. So a human oversight cannot be understated at all in these medical practices. You need to, because a patient not just needs a medicine, it needs to be reassured as well that the medicine is provided by somebody who is legitimately qualified to provide that information, that particular prescription too. Having said that, I think we are more moving towards in future of more sort of a personalized healthcare, where your sensors would allow you to gather the data on a regular and more continuous fashion, where the monitoring becomes much more transparent for the user as much as it for their doctor, and the doctor then actually plays a role of intervening where necessary, rather than having to come as treat the damage already done. So this is more like a point of care treatment and prevention mechanism, rather than coming towards the cure side as well. It's a completely new separate discussion that we can have on the topic as well. But just to simply answer you the question, I think there's a two element to consider, not just the treatment, but also the consumer trust element and the acceptance of the treatment.
Yeah, very good point. I completely agree with that. Aravind, how are you thinking? Is this science fiction or is this next year?
It's not science fiction. I can see that more and more technology getting incorporated, especially sensing, getting incorporated into the medical practices, into the GPs, and into the point of care centers. That means the medical practitioner or the clinician himself or herself has to deal with lots of parameters. So previously, if you were dealing with 5 vital signs, and now you have to see a lot more and process a lot more before coming to a conclusion, which is really good, because now we can maybe get more accurate conclusion of what you're trying to diagnose. This is good for the patient, but I would think the doctor-patient interaction is going to continue for a long foreseeable time. I'm not going to see a robotic doctor anytime soon.
No, neither am I, actually. Okay, you heard it there first. So neither men there are committing to a time frame on this, but both can see the technology catching up with the ambition but there's always that human touch which will be central to the experience. I'm going to jump ahead on a question and then come back to something. I mean, you mentioned it, Faisal, about this personalization, and I think that resonated with me very strongly about this idea of the constant monitoring that a lot of healthcare, health conditions require, that kind of ongoing maintenance. The devices today sound to me, but you'll correct me, I'm sure, to be quite complex, quite expensive, frankly. So the ability to put them into the field, I guess, other than perhaps basic, I don't know, diabetes monitoring kit, it seems some way off yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the direction of travel, though, right? In time, these devices will get more accessible and therefore can be used in more applications. This idea of your own personal monitoring system system. Is that fair, Faisal?
Yes. And you have to consider the users of any technology first before you consider the technology itself. How the trends in the consumer market are changing, and what is it that the market demands from these kind of devices. So most of these sensors are now coming towards the user-friendly experience of the consumer-centric applications, because this is what the health-conscious market is now demanding. Miniaturization of it, constant monitoring, and being self-aware of what's going on in their body as well, rather than just relying on the impact of a certain disease and then going towards a doctor. And optical devices essentially are at the heart of a lot of these personalized medicine advances. Personalized medicine is about diagnosing and treating patients based on their unique characteristics and their genetics, their specific disease biomarkers, etc., rather than a one-size-fits-all approach. And all of these optical technologies, they excel at the kind of the detailed molecular level sensing that makes this possible. So from the technical side, optics plays a key role in delivering what actually we want to see in our consumer markets. Then, for example, optical biosensors can detect specific biomarkers in a patient's blood or saliva rapidly, and we have these ultra-sensitive photonic chips now that can say detect a particular cancer-related protein at a very low concentration. They then get translated eventually into the future into more wearable optical sensors, which is all about then collecting the data about that particular user specifically over the long period of time as well. Because we also know that most of the diseases can be detected way earlier than they actually show themselves in some sort of a symptoms or impact on the internal organs then. This is where we have these personalized imaging then that could come in handy. Another area could be molecular diagnostics, for example, where these personalized medicine would come with quite a revolutionary change in how the consumers could take that. And we shouldn't actually forget about the AI, especially combined with the optical data. Photonics provides the data, high throughput scanning of tissues, etc., and then the AI finds the needle in a haystack kind of an information in a very unique treatment. To sum up, in a way, optical devices supports essentially most of the personalized medicine by providing quite the detailed, individual specific information very safely and quickly. And they would let us see at the molecular and the cellular level what's going on with a particular patient, whether that's through a microscope or a spectrometer or a wearable or an image scanner at the end. By seeing these details, one can personalize and the overall sort of a care towards that user and be more specific towards their outcomes then.
Okay. And then, Aravind, in terms of product development, how critical is personalization in terms of the way your business is evolving and the product development focus that you've got? Is it a kind of critical pillar of what you're trying to get developed over time?
Yes, my answer to that question is yes, Mark. The reason is, if we look at the technology that we are trying to develop, these are silicon detectors, similar to your microprocessors on your mobile phones or cameras. So our business, in our business, when we develop these detectors, they can be used for large benchtop instruments, but at the same time, we can also use it for miniaturized handheld devices or even smaller instruments. That means they are suitable for most of the personalized medicine applications where somebody staying at home needs to take a vital sign. That person can use this device without going to a lab or a hospital. So that means it is important to have the technology miniaturized, made it at low cost, and operated at low power, so that somebody can use it at home with much ease, and then take the data and transmit it elsewhere, let's say to your doctor or to your hospital. So that our technology enables this quite easily, because we are a silicon-based technology, the same that goes into your mobile phones, which is produced millions of units a year, right? If you think about how many mobile phone sales a year, it's tens of millions. So this technology can reach that volume, and I believe that is what is needed for enabling some of these personalized medicine applications, which Faisal mentioned as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we've had a question come in about SPADs, which I'll come back to in a second. But you both mentioned in different ways this issue of power, sustainability, cost, etc. Obviously, it's a challenge for any product in today's environment to kind of tick that box and to have a kind of solution for that. How can processes in this area be more sustainable while continuing to innovate? Is there a kind of a quick fix, or is there a roadmap that you could define that allows a kind of an answer to that ambition? Faisal, I'll go back to you if I may.
Sure. As we discussed earlier as well, sustainability is no longer a buzzword, and this is something which is going to be a defining factor in a lot of the products which we'll see a daylight at the end of the tunnel, or not, as a matter of fact. There are a lot of ways that one can actually see that problem as well. But an innovation that's too costly or environmentally taxing won't get far in today's world. That's the bottom line. So you want to ensure that the new optical processes have a viable path. That includes considering regulatory trends. Talking about Europe, they're talking about new regulations that may require environmental impact assessments for medical devices. So the writing is on the wall that sustainable design is the future. Now, how to get there is another question altogether. There are several approaches one can take, say, starting from eco-friendly material in the design side. And this is probably the bottom line, or essentially to start with something that everybody has to start thinking earlier on. That means choosing the type of material, whether it's biodegradable or recyclable material or not. For disposable components like optical probes, you can have cuvettes or cartridges, or even sort of a packaging of those devices whenever possible. And then another important element is the designing of those devices to be durable and reusable wherever we can. For example, instead of using single-use plastic fiber-optic probes, you could use, there are a lot of actually companies which are using and researching biopolymer fibers that could dissolve harmlessly after use, or it can be composted as well. Then you also need to be considering about the fact that the devices need to be energy efficient. So you're focusing on energy efficient optics, like using LEDs or low power laser diodes. One of the key steps is then optimizing devices to use just the amount of light which is needed and no more. So it's not like a continuous on functionality. It's like more about the functionality integration in such a way as well that it sort of meets certain sort of standards of the sustainable features then. And it sort of ties back to what everyone was saying about to the sensors like SPADs, which are extremely sensitive to the light. So if your detector is very efficient, you don't need as intense a light source, saving the energy. Another key element is then the life cycle and the circular economy element. Then we should encourage a circular approach in medtech that might involve refurbishing and recycling high-value optical equipments. A lot of companies are already sort of doing that. There are some startups and hospitals in the EU, for instance, that are collaborating on the programs to take back the used medical devices for refurbishing purposes. Then you also want to have these sustainable manufacturing practices, like using good form of energy, whether it's solar or wind, reducing the overall water consumption during the processes. Then comes to logistics, where you want to have a localized production of the optical devices, so that it doesn't leave a lot of footprint when you're transporting or shipping them from different parts of the world. So crucially, none of this should come at the cost of innovation. In fact, sustainability can drive the innovation itself. And we have seen that when a lot of engineers change the way they design or mindset about designing the product earlier on said, they come up with extremely innovative solution, and we see that in our own production quite effectively, and a lot of the use cases too.
Okay. Aravind, an agreement with that in terms of the need and the process?
Totally agree. I think from a technology point of view, from a design point of view, having the sustainability in your mind from the early stage of your product design is quite important, especially thinking about do you need to design something that's going to be thrown away after single use, or can you repair and reuse the things, reuse the device, or can you upgrade it without bending the system? Can you use like non-toxic materials in the process? Can you adhere to simple manufacturing process instead of having processes where you need to have multiple steps, which consumes power, produce lots of waste gases, etc. How much recyclability can you include in your manufacturing and design is another point. From electronics point of view, I think when you become an electronics engineer, the first thing that you probably learn is design. Always make sure that your circuits consume as low power as possible, especially in these times when everything is battery operated. So low power consumption, optimal operating speed is quite important. You don't need to clock your devices super fast so that they give you lots of data. You just need to operate at the optimal speed. So optimal power, optimal speed will all help in reducing the energy consumption and thereby sustainability as well. So eco-friendly manufacturing, sustainability practices early on from design, and low power electronics and optimized software stack would help in achieving sustainability.
Okay, so thank you. That's a useful intro into the next quick question that I've got here, which is about the best practice advice for anyone who may be aiming to establish optical applications for biomedical sensing. Where do you start? So I think I would hear sustainability needs to be at the starting point of what you are trying to kind of develop or implement. Anything else on that checklist of things in terms of helping people get going? Aravind, I'll stay with you if I may, and then we'll go to Faisal.
Yeah, I would say having a clear focus, because biomedical sensing is a very broad realm. Instead of just developing something for the sake of developing that, try to solve a problem, identify the problem, which is a big problem, and of course there is a physical solution to that. Then solving that problem, coupled with suitable modeling, market study, and also taking advice from experts in the field or engaging with experts quite early on your journey is very important, I believe.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Of course, this is operating in a very regulatory, kind of constrained environment for very sensible reasons. So, of course, taking it cautiously and checking as you go is probably a very, very critical point. Faisal, anything to add to that list?
Definitely. And given the fact that we talk to a huge number of companies on an annual basis, I think we have now sort of almost developed a roadmap of the list of things not to do, which actually create quite a bottleneck for a lot of companies to succeed in bringing a value to the market. And especially if we talked about these optical applications of biosensing, you need to engage with the end users, clinicians, patients, healthcare providers very earlier on. And this sort of a very well ties with the mastering the basics of medical device regulation and the validation processes. They need to be very much abreast and quite up to date with the emerging trends in terms of to keep innovating, because some of the algorithms they might be using today as sort of a really high-end application or a great value proposition in a 5 years time that might be a standard use case. See an example of the OCT as well. So you need to be aware of what the market is demanding and where things are going. Also focus on robustness and also the reproducibility of the data or the results from those devices. Extremely important. Supply chain is really critical when it comes to best practices, where the products are coming from and where they're heading towards, how you're going to be sourcing them and how you'll be distributing them. Again, it ties back to the sustainability element. Start building interdisciplinary teams, because this is no longer a single unit focused kind of an application. You're mostly looking at devices which will require a lot of elements in order to succeed in the future.
Okay.
What else? I would also put collaboration in the feedbacks and plan for scaling and manufacturability earlier on. If you want to sort of succeed, you need to know what it would look like when you actually mass scale and what you would be needing in terms of technological development, as well as collaboration, investments, and the infrastructure in order to require that to bring to the masses.
That's really good advice. I mean, you can't stress this enough, can you? Particularly in this area of application, it's a very complex, very cautious in some ways
Yeah.
environment in which to be developing product or indeed, implementing applications into kind of outcome-led challenges. So. I'm going to just ask a quick question, if I may, about SPADs. We've had somebody ask about them specifically, and I'm just going to read it out. In what devices are SPADs now used, and what new applications and products will they enable? What problems do they solve which SPADs currently on the market cannot? So it sounds to me like this is why should I be interested is a summary of that. Aravind, do you want to answer that one quickly before we go on to the final question?
Yeah, sure. I can answer that question. Thanks, Mark. SPADs are a platform technology, so it can be used for many applications. It's application agnostic. So we have our products being used for spectroscopic applications, be it Raman, be it FLIM. We use it for time of flight applications where you can use it for generating 3D images or 3D maps of the scene. You can use it for ranging applications where you use it for find the distance to certain objects. You can use it for analyzing chemical samples. You can use it for generating 3D volume maps, etc. So it's a platform technology which has various applications in be it medical, be it scientific, be it consumer, or be it automotive. So that's my short answer to that. They can solve lots of problems compared to conventional detectors, conventional imaging detectors. What SPADs do is, as I mentioned earlier, they detect single photons. So they are very, very, very sensitive. So you can get results from these detectors with less energy per jet. That means if you think about analyzing samples, recently one of our collaborators have done this comparison, and they found out that with our detectors, they can now sense or analyze more compounds, chemical compounds, through spectroscopic applications compared to other detectors. So this is a good example why SPADs do excel in, let's say, spectroscopic domain, and you can do this with very, very low light levels, and they can also give you timing information which other types of optical sensors cannot do at the moment.
Okay, thank you. That's a very helpful checklist of things to kind of think about. Okay, this is the final question. We are running out of time. We generally try and keep these to within an hour. This is the crystal ball moment. We've covered some of this, and I've made some notes of what I think you're going to say, but I'm going to test my theory live and ask about what future trends you see emerging over the next few years as these optical technologies continue to evolve in this biomedical space. So two or three examples of trends, and I'll see whether they match up with my crib sheet that I've just been scribbling down as you've been talking. Faisal, we'll go to you first, if I may.
Okay, the crystal ball moment. Okay, I see it this way. If I have to invest today in the future technology, what would be the top 2 or 3 areas that I would invest in or to pick to look into? I would definitely say that one of the biggest trend would be convergence of the optics with the AI and data. So AI-powered optical diagnostics is becoming almost routine in the next 5 to 10 years' time. Then I would secondly pick up miniaturization and portability. Optical devices that used to be like bulky and they're already shrinking quite fast, and we'll see more handheld wearable optical scanners. Maybe in the next 5 years, I expect something like a spectral tricorder or a compact device that can scan multiple vital biomarkers optically to emerge from ambulances or home use cases. And finally, one could say personalized and precision optics then, specifically for ongoing future direction. Things like patient-specific optical treatment, for example, optogenetics, which is an emerging therapy, could be kind of a good use case too.
Okay, thank you. I've got a couple of those, so that was a tick for me, and I missed a couple. Aravind, and anything to add to that?
I agree to every point Faisal mentioned here. So I was thinking in my mind that an analogy for this would be a smartphone. If you think about a smartphone, 10 years ago, you had your televisions, radios, you had your desktop computers. Everything has been shrunken into a smartphone, and you have all the features there, including your cameras, are now on smartphones. So similar to that, medical technology is also going to shrink a lot, and it's going to be more personalized, and everybody is going to have this tricorder in their hands and collecting vitals and helping themselves, generating a lot more data, of course, for sure. That's the trend that I feel is going to happen. And this is also going to bring a lot more challenges, basically regulatory challenges, privacy challenges. How do you manage this big data? And also how do you manage this new new era of these portable medical devices, like millions of medical devices in your home, etc. So, of course, interesting times, but that comes with all the challenges.
Yeah,
I think we called it, we discussed earlier, and I said the word was multimodal systems, right? So yeah, so I think I just picked three, but I think the fourth would be, if you sum up what Arvind said, it would be multimodal systems then.
okay, thank you. Really, really useful, really good kind of analysis there of what is in reality a complex environment to operate in, regulation, sensitivity, challenge of context, but at the same time critical, I guess, to all of our futures. All of us need healthcare, and all of us will know people who, have relied on that in kind of very challenging contexts. So thank you.
Added to,
Yeah, go
sorry,
on.
Mark, just one
Yep.
more point. I mean,
Yep.
if you look at, of course, there are challenges, and of course, it's interesting to see these devices getting miniaturized and getting more accessible. This means affordable healthcare for much more, or a huge population who can't afford this at the moment, or who can't have a proper healthcare. So that's another good point about all this.
Yeah,
Technology
absolutely.
bringing healthcare to everyone.
Absolutely. It's so easy, isn't it, to see this through the prism of kind of the Western sort of nations that we kind of live and work in. But in reality, the majority of the world is playing catch up to even where we are now. So the ability for this to scale outwards quickly at a low cost and kind of robustness is obviously understood and critical. We have run out of time. I hope everyone has found this a useful exercise to spend time watching. This online panel discussion will remain accessible on the Electro-Optics website, of course, and that is electroopticsnospace.com, and eventually it will turn up on our YouTube channel. In the meantime, we'll also be creating an online article. So please spread the word among your colleagues if you have enjoyed the discussion. All that remains for me to do is to thank our presenters, Aravind and Faisal, and the Europa Science production team working away hard in the background. And a thank you, of course, to everybody watching who's taken the time to watch this online panel discussion. Both gentlemen will be in the Laser Water Photonics show in Munich in a couple of weeks. So try and catch them, ask them more questions. They are bright, great men to work with. So please, harass them in the nicest possible way if you have any further questions that you wanted to ask about their perspective on this topic. Obviously, keep an eye out for future sessions. We have another online panel discussion after Laser Water Photonics at the start of July, which is on the subject of optical design software. And a final quick plug, if I may, if you think there's anyone in your universe that should be in this year's Photonics 100 list, like Faisal was last year, you should know that nominations are now open, and details of how to nominate someone, or indeed yourself, are on our website. So we close the nominations window soon after the Munich show. Thank you for your time again. Look forward to seeing you again on one of these upcoming discussion panels in the near future. Thank you again to Aravind and Faisal. That's been a great conversation, and I hope everybody's got a lot out of it. Thank you again. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.